Thanks very much, Mr. Krishnan, for joining us here on ET Now. Always a pleasure having you on the channel. First things first, let me talk to you about the budget. There were a slew of announcements that were made for the startup sector. Of course, a 500 crore worth fund for the AI segment in terms of creating a center of excellence, and then also creating a fund of funds, which has been a long pending demand of the startup sector. In fact, they won multiple fund of funds. But with these announcements coming in, how are you looking at the impact that these announcements will have with respect to growth in the sector?
I think by and large, there are a number of announcements specifically for the electronics sector. Even more than this, the electronics manufacturing sector has seen a number of taxation changes, both on the direct tax side, which will enable establishment of more manufacturing facilities, and also on the indirect tax side in terms of tariff changes and customs duty on certain inputs, and also ease of doing business in terms of the taxation side. So I expect that both for electronic hardware manufacture and for other areas, there would be a considerable fillip through the budget. It's been a very good budget for the electronic sector, and the industry is fairly upbeat about it.
Okay. Now, when you speak about the electronics segment, there were a slew of announcements that were made with respect to the electronics segment. You also have, the PLI for electronics manufacturing 9,000 crores, GCC in Tier 2, 3 cities, semi-conductor and mobile production worth 7,000 crores, and of course tax relief that you mentioned. So, if you could break down some of these components and talk about the impact that they will have on each of these segments and the budgetary allocation, if you can talk about that as well in terms of operationalizing these.
You see, I think the budgetary allocation reflects the fruition of many ongoing schemes. The budget, if you look at it from 2023-24, which when it was, we spent about a little in excess of 12,000 crore. By the time you come into 25-26, we are expected to spend close to 26,000 crore. It reflects the level of ambition. And the two major components where we are required to spend is in the PLI schemes, both for large-scale electronic manufacture, that is the mobile PLI, where substantial disbursements are expected next year as well, and also the kicking in of the IT hardware PLI, where actual claims will start coming in from next year. Likewise, in the semiconductor space as well, there's adequate provision made in the budget to meet claims for the 5 units which have already been approved and where construction work has started. So their claims will start coming in on a pari passu basis, and we have adequate funds to meet all those commitments. So what you are really seeing is the actual implementation and rollout of the various initiatives that have been announced, and that is what the budget truly supports. Now, on the taxation side, the simplification and the modification and the rationalization of the tariff rates on the customs side should see a greater fillip to more investment in electronics manufacture, and that should take the electronics manufacturing industry even further.
There is a hope that it will also give a boost to consumption as well, and given that there could be more money in the hands of people now. But sir, let me ask you specifically about the components PLI. Of course, there was a lot of buzz around that it will be introduced in the budget. However, that announcement wasn't really made. Any tentative timelines that you have so far as introducing that PLI scheme is concerned?
I hope and expect that before the next financial year commences, we should have the PLIs, the component scheme in place. There are a series of steps which need to be taken in the process of approval, and it is going through those steps. So once the scheme is announced, then people will apply and all of that will get integrated. But I do not expect any real expenditure under the scheme very quickly. That expenditure will take a little longer to happen, because the units, the investments will need to be made. They need to start production and thereafter make their claims. So there is a time period. There's a runway before which they will make claims. So the fact that it is not included in the budget is not something which worries me too much.
About electronics manufacturing, and I think the Prime Minister today as well in Parliament spoke about making in India and exporting. What are the goals that you have as far as the electronics manufacturing industry is concerned, both for domestic manufacturing and for exports?
As you're aware, the Prime Minister has already indicated that the target will be $500 billion by 2030, and of which about $350 billion is meant for domestic production and about $150 billion is intended for export. And we have a tough target ahead of us, and we have a lot of work to happen in the sector.
Yes.
And the government is prepared to do its bit. The industry also needs to step up. Government has already done its bit. Some of the budget announcements relating to taxation measures are basically geared in that direction. And the other schemes, existing schemes and the newer schemes which will come in, will also support that.
Yes, sir. And what about the semiconductor phase 2 of the semiconductor mission, India semiconductor mission? That has also been on the anvil for quite some time now. Is there time before that kicks in?
See, there are two things which need to happen. We need to close out the applications that we have under Semicon 1. There are some applications which either people have withdrawn or there's not enough material to proceed further. So we'll have to take a final decision on some of the pending applications. There are some other applications which are smaller and which can be accommodated within the balance money available under ISM 1, which we will need to process, and we are doing that process right now. Once that process is completed, we are working in parallel on ISM 2. So we have to show a finalization on ISM 1 before ISM 2 actually gets approved. So we are finishing up that process, and ISM 2 will get approved hopefully during 25-26, during the